Tony is trying to run across the entire length of the UK completely barefoot.
We have this modern millions of different diseases, right? And I put them down to the suffering that we're occurring because of our habitat and our environment, but the habits within those habitats as well. So really, my coaching experience has been how to change people's habits by offering small changes. And with those small changes, it can make a big impact in the way they're choosing to live. And I say choosing because really it ultimately does come down to the choice, really, of how we want to live. So I've been privy to some pretty amazing lifestyles. I've mentioned it before, but flown around by private jet, met A-listers, sports personalities, could be students, could be pensioners, whoever I work with, it doesn't really matter. If their fundamental physical, social, spiritual needs aren't met, then they're humans in suffering. But the good news is the more and more nature I introduce to their lifestyle and their lives, the happier they become, which again is part of this restyling nature. And it started off as rewilding, but most people didn't understand the term. It's becoming more mainstream now. More people are understanding about rewilding humans, whereas before it was like, oh, we're going to introduce wolves to Yellowstone Park and create a trophic cascade or reforestation or something, but not understand how we can actually do this with a human being. That's kind of the crux of it.
Yeah, for sure. But a lot of people out there who are not in tune, let's say we're living a natural lifestyle, might perceive some of the things that you do as quite extreme, or societally they're very extreme. You would call them biologically normal.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for example, Tony doesn't have any chairs in his house.
Nope.
But I find that super fascinating because a lot of the feedback I got from our first podcast is that although I won't go as far as Tony goes, I can go halfway. I can, maybe squat when I watch television. I can maybe try and be in a squat for 30 minutes a day. I can take my shoes off when I come in. So I'm actually starting to connect with my feet and the grounds. So I think, yes, some people may think they're not ready to go as far as you're going, but you're inspiring them to actually take small steps, which I think is a great thing. But I think what you're currently doing at the moment is really what I want to delve into today. So Tony is trying to run across the entire length of the UK completely barefoot. Not in barefoot shoes.
Not in these.
But completely barefoot. And so, Tony, I wonder if you could explain, what was your drive to do this? When did that idea come about? That, hey, I know what a fun thing to do in September. Take my family on the road and actually try and run around the UK barefoot.
It started off I was in a ceremony. So it was in like a spiritual context of a ceremony. This pair of boots popped up in front of my eyes, and it was a pair of leather boots with a metal bar that ran across them. And those pair of boots were the boots that I was given as a baby. So I was born with a deformity in my feet. I was the longest baby on record in Reading Hospital, which meant I took on this amazing adaptation where I managed to curl my feet up underneath my armpits. I must have looked like a trussed chicken or something when I came out. But it then meant that the first 12 weeks was spent going back each week to have plaster put onto my feet. So I'd be in plaster cast for 12 weeks. My mum found it incredibly traumatic. So she used to be in tears every time. So that would have been kind of uploading, I guess, into that. And then I was put into these boots with a metal bar. Anyway. So that, I guess, that's in the roots of it. I think that's where it started. In this ceremony, it was like, I've got to lose the shoes. That was kind of the first thing that came to my mind. I'd already thought about running from Land's End to John O'Groats. I didn't necessarily think about doing it barefoot. I thought about just running it, and doing something. And then within that, lose the shoes, that was the first thing that came up. It's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to run from Land's End to John O'Groats, and I'm going to do it barefoot, and I'm going to throw the boots in the sea at the end. That's what kind of came up for me. And so that was the start of it. And then it was like, right, okay, but, the reaction I would say to people, I'm going to run barefoot from Land's End to John O'Groats. Always this, oh my God, like the reaction when I say, we don't have any furniture in the home, or, I do ice baths, or I, do meditation or breath work, or things that can, again, they can be perceived as socially extreme. It was that window of opportunity for me to then say, here's a platform, and with that platform, I can raise awareness for sustainability in the environment. So there's kind of two-pronged attack, really, for me. It was like, right, okay, I have this thing, the physicality. I'm going to deal with the trauma of that from birth. And at the same time, through that exposure that I can give people, it's like, right, okay, we can interview sustainability experts along the way. and then raise funds and fundraise for 6 amazing charities and organizations. That's kind of within it. And then since then I've done deeper work, and what I found is that, it's not about the shoes at all. I let the shoes go long time ago, and really it's just come down to this. I think Lola we woke up one morning. I was in a bit of a state, I think, on Wednesday morning, hobbling around and head in my hands, sobbing, and Lola was like, "Have you thought about why you're doing this, Papa?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean, the bigger picture is this: that Hugo Taghome, I was interviewing from Surfers Against Sewerage, and he said, can you imagine that we were using like whale oil, right? We were hunting whales, and we were extracting stuff from the whale so that we could use it, right? And that's that generational amnesia I was talking about in one of the previous podcasts again, that we have no recognition of that. I don't remember that, but there'll be generations that do remember that. And so for my kids, it's going to be, well, look at the state of things. What is this handover, and what representation are we, and who are we? How do we become better humans again? I remember in my parents' car, we'd be driving along on holiday, and they were smokers, and they'd smoke with the windows up in the car, and we'd be like in the car as kids, right? But that was where everyone did it. It was like the norm, you see. But for me to look at my parents now, I'm like, what were you thinking? And for me, it's, for my kids to look at me in the future, and I can say, well, actually, what? I ran for Land's End General Growth to raise awareness for sustainability in the environment. So the bigger picture, I think, is that, again, it's always about, for me, being the change and becoming a better human, I think, underneath it all.
It sounds like this calling to go on such an amazing adventure, it feels as though it's come from a very deep place inside you. It doesn't feel as though, just thought, this would be quite a cool thing to do. It's
definitely not superficial.
It's going to look good on Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
I don't get that sense from you at all that any part of it is about that. It's about, and as you just shared, there's something really, really deep about this. And I guess watching your journey so far, I wonder if you could give us an update on where you are, where you should be, because you've had quite a few challenges along the way. And I think we should explore what those challenges are, especially in the context that this is a spiritual journey on some way. So I'd love to, if you could explain to people, what have those challenges been so far? And then really I want to explore how you have dealt with those challenges, because they're pretty full on.
Yeah, I think from the get-go, I've always said, I said in the previous interview that running for me isn't just a physical experience, not cardiovascular exercise. It's a physical, social, spiritual experience. And through breath work and meditation and breathing while I'm out there and making contact with the earth, I reached like these heightened states. It's been amazing. Like what you can process when you're out there. And I'm out there for 12 hours, it's just like 12 hours of processing. And already I've cleared so much stuff. And then I think it was on, what day was it? Maybe Tuesday. I think Tuesday I'd arrived at this it was like 3 days in, and I said, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like my mind and body had this conversation, and the conversation was, this is what we're doing now. I get it. This is what we do every day. This is what we're going to be doing. We just get up and we go and do this run. And so I remember if I was being in the present, it would have just been accepting that. But something else came in. It was like, I've got a blog about this. Trust the process, respect the process, be patient whilst in the process. And when you understand it's all process, just be, right? But I wasn't just being. That was the point. I was telling everyone about being, but I wasn't being in that process. I was doing something else. So it meant, I feel that I just got ahead of myself in that. And then within, I think, what was probably a couple of hours of that, a thorn got into my heel. And the process showed me, you want to be the process, this is it. And so the thorn in my heel then was driving me out on the outside of my left foot, which meant, if you know anything, with the human foot's like incredible, like 33 joints, 26 bones, over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments reside in your foot, but it has specific loading areas and balance areas. And the big toe is like 4 times denser, thicker than all the other toes. And the skinniest toes are, where do you think they are? Which ones? Right, the little toes, right? So the little toes are the most skinny. So they're the ones that definitely aren't for load, but it was throwing me out there. So my 4th and 5th met heads just got really inflamed. And by the end of that day already, my foot was starting to swell. It was painful to put down. I then that was by Wednesday morning I was feeling that already. And then I had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's 150 miles I put on top of that.
You're doing 30 miles a day.
30 miles a day. So from the get-go, 30 miles a day. So by the time I'd hit 247 miles, I think, was on Sunday night. And we were running into Whittington. And there was a guy that wanted to run with me. He ran along a bit of the journey with me. And then we did an interview just way back there, just that same day. And the roads, they were different. It was like, it wasn't like tarmac I'd felt before. So it's really weird. I've done so much coaching and so much practice and so much training and so much mindfulness and so much breath work, but you cannot train for these variables. It can be a piece of tarmac you haven't experienced before. It can be a thorn that you've never experienced before. It could be a piece of glass. It could be anything that could be thrown in the way. So that's just, you understand that's just processed eventually. It's just like it's part of the run. So for me, it became that the outside of the foot becomes so swollen on that day. The tarmac was so sharp that where I'd been overloading the right side of my foot, the skin had become so thin that I pivoted off the big toe and it split the skin between my big toe and the second toe. So the left one's was really swollen. I wouldn't get my shoe on. It was that swollen. The right one, right underneath there, had split. And so I woke up on Monday morning, a shadow of a man. Basically, I just looked absolutely terrible. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror, and I knew everyone else was looking at me like, "Ooh, it doesn't look good today." And we still went out. I got changed, got into the car. Procrastinated. What should have been 7:30 turned into 8. Then it turned into 8:15.
About whether you should go and run.
No, just trying to get out of the car. Just even the process of trying to get the physical body out of the car. There was a massive divide between my mind and my physiology at that point.
So you were struggling to get out of the car
because
of the swelling and the pain.
I could get out of the car. I could say, right, I'm just going to get out of the car. But my mind wasn't allowing me to get out of the car. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like, I'm going to choose everything I possibly can right now to not allow myself to get out of the car, Do you know what I mean? It could have been anything. It was just a distraction. It was procrastination, basically. It was just like, this is, what are you doing kind of moment.
So why were you procrastinating?
Well, it's a level of pain that I don't think I'd actually reached before. So I think between the swelling and the split, knowing that I've got to put my feet on the same tarmac that put me in that position the night before, was part of it. And so I managed to get out of the car. I kind of hobbled around the corner and then I faced all the commuter traffic because it was getting later. It was howling down with rain, and I was watching even the parents go past with their kids, and there's this crazy man standing in the road, like hobbling along with no shoes on, barefoot, with these swollen feet. And I did my normal warm up. I did a squat, so I do a squat, and then I stood up, and then I would normally jump on the spot to try and get some rhythm in the body, and then try and get tempo. Like we've done tempo drills, and then off I'd go. But it was rather like that conversation of trying to get out the car. It's a bizarre one. The mind knows, and it's almost like the mind knows if you do this, you're going to hurt yourself. So I tried to pull my feet off the floor, and it was as if they were stuck. So I couldn't actually physically get my feet off the ground to start running. And I was like, look, okay, so we'll work with some breath, right? So do some breath work, try and calm the feeling of vomit. I was basically going to be sick. And so I was trying to hold that back. And then I was trying to hold the tears back. Then I was trying to hold the roaring back, and then it all just came. So I was sobbing in the middle of the traffic, roaring at the traffic, obscenities and whatever I could to try and get myself into some kind of action.
What were the tears about? Do you know what they were about? Was it about the pain you were in, or was there more?
I think in that moment, it's everything. It's like, the decision from December up until that moment and everything in between, all the training, all the hours, or maybe I should have done more. The questioning, had I got the plan? Is this right? Even the Lola conversation of, have you thought about really why you're doing this, Papa? Everything was in that moment. And then it was, I know I can't do this. Right now, I can't do this. And so then I questioned what would be, what's the next conversation? Because I've set this as a 30-30 challenge. This is my challenge. I'm going to do this in 30 days. I've put even my coaching philosophy and all my belief system that I can do this run is in this moment right now. And I had to question everything.
So that's a lot of pressure.
And that's only day 8.
You know, looking at it from the outside, you have been talking about this for many months. I've obviously interviewed you about it.
I've done some massive interviews, right?
You've been on Rich Roll's podcast.
Sky News.
You've been on Sky News talking about this challenge you're going to do. And everyone's, get it. Wow, it's amazing, Tony. You're going to do it barefoot. This is great. We can't wait to watch. So I can imagine in that moment, only 8 days in, when you've almost, in many ways, staked your reputation on this, you're out there, your philosophy, you've taken your family on the road with you, and you're injured, and you can't probably put weights properly on that foot, let alone run on it, certainly with no shoes on. That must, it must hit you on every level: physical, emotional, spiritual. You're getting attacked on every single level there. And you said you were shouting obscenities in the road. So how have you dealt with that? Because I guess all of us face struggle in our lives at some point, right? All of us have a plan. Many people have tried to change their lifestyle before. And I said, I'm going to go on this dietary plan now. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do this. And then they come across, let's say, an injury or a reason why they can't do that. So I'm intrigued as to how you have coped with this. Also, maybe as a way of shining a light to some of us as how we might be able to cope with adversity in our own lives. So, you may not feel that you've been the example for that, but I'm interested. You shouted obscenities. What else did you do? How did you come round? Because tonight you seem pretty calm, and you have been posting on Instagram about trusting the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you believe that in yourself, that you've been trusting the process, or is that something? Yeah, I've got to say that. I have to feel that because I know that's what I should be doing. But in that moment of turmoil, is it hard to trust the process?
I think it depends how much work you've done. So I've done a fair bit of work, and my mum was instantly on the phone, and my sister was on the phone, and people have been on the phone that I've known for many years, And all I can say to them is, look, I've been in far worse positions in life. I've been in much darker positions in life. And I always know that there's such valuable lessons in those dark spaces. And part of that understanding that it's all just a process. And I keep repeating it, trusting the process. But the message that came in on Tuesday was that it is all process. We're just being a process. It's part of the experience. And so the experience can be good or bad. It's still an experience. It's all one thing. But we always want the good and the happiness and everything that comes with that thing. But without the bad stuff, how do you appreciate the good stuff? You know what I mean? It's like, it's all one roller coaster of a ride in a way that is the life. And I wouldn't take on a challenge like this if I didn't think I can't deal with the adversity some way. And how do I get through it? It's very simple, free tools that we all have access to. And so that's human contact, as in hugs from your tribe, because I needed that. There's breath work, because breath work enables me to instantly just drop into my body again. Breath's like the first thing to get to. It's just like, right, okay, how do we get back to nasal breathing, just completely down-regulate and just make sense of it all? Meditation again, mobility, get movement back into the body. I've become really quite stiff in a way because of the tension and fear, I guess, that was going through that system. You're going to make me do this again. I've got to go and do this again. So mobilizing that. And then cold therapy. I'm a big fan of, as I said before, ice baths and cold immersion, because I think it honestly feels like a rite of passage. I could have anything going on in the world. I went into that bathroom some days like a 90-year-old Tony, but not a empowered 90-year-old. I mean, someone that's had their power taken away and just hobbling into the bathroom, and then I'd close the door and you'd hear the ice bags emptying in the bath, and then I'd get in and I'd spend 5 minutes in there, and then I come out pops another being, a different being. So it's just having tools, simple tools that I think we lose sight of, and we're looking for other solutions maybe. Yeah.
Did you clearly got access to these tools to help you when you come across adversity.
Yeah.
But we're all human, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we might know the right thing to do, but sometimes in that moment, it's hard to actually do those things. Do you think you dropped into that straight away, or do you think it took you? Do you think you flipped into some old patterns, let's say initially, and then you had to go, okay, hold on a minute. This is a learning opportunity. What can I learn from this? How can I embrace this? How can I lean into this?
Yeah, I think what came out of that experience to start was how multifaceted the personality is. There's the victim, there's the dictator, there's the little boy in there that's, and there's the superhero. There's many different characters within.
Did you feel the victim mentality?
Yeah, the victim came in.
Why does this happen to me? I'm out there on the run. How could that happen? On this
but
incident?
again, because it's understanding that if you work with breath, you don't give the. If you go straight into breath, the voice comes up, this stuff comes up, and it highlights it, and it's like, okay, there's the victim, okay, and then just spend a bit of time there, because again, there's lessons within the victim, there's lessons within becoming the little boy who needs his mum within that situation. There's lessons within all of it, because it's all process. Again, it's process and it's an experience. What can I experience from this moment? So let me just relish in the moment for a second. Let me cry. Let me put my head in my hands. Let me be everything I need to be in this moment, because this moment is, I'm going to become strong from that. There's something that will rise out of it. And already there was a victory today. I ran up the stairs today.
Fantastic.
We changed our house today. We moved up to Chester. And without even thinking about it, just ran up the stairs and back down again. So already there was, oh, wow, okay.
So you've had 2 days off from running.
2 days off.
You brought your family on the road with you, so
Absolutely.
I'm assuming you're spending a lot of time with the family.
Yeah.
Your plan is at the moment to get back on the road tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m, yeah.
And you're planning to do 30 miles?
And we'll do 30 tomorrow, yeah, and then it will continue from there.
And you're feeling confident in yourself that actually, what, I can put that sort of mileage through my foot and through my ankle?
Yeah, look, bearing in mind that I've completed 9.5 marathons in 8 days, right? And I've said it all along, just
hold on a minute. Even that in itself, I'm taking that for granted because we're thinking about, we still got 30 to go, but I think that in itself is a phenomenal achievement.
Yeah.
Would you agree? It's a round of applause. I mean, I think that is... Woo! Well, I think we should celebrate that because many of us in the room probably haven't even done a marathon. I know I've met one ultra marathoner here today. I was introduced before this, but a lot of us have not even done a marathon. So to do that many is pretty incredible.
That's what I say within the technique, and I've always said that we're the descendants of some pretty awesome beings, right? So they're our ancestors, let's say, and even the tribes of today that still go out, they were persistent hunt and they will do things every day, right? So when I spoke to one of my friends, they were like, "Oh, you're kidding me, Tony! I can't believe it. I can't believe how upset you are. You've done 9.5 marathons in 8 days. I had to train for a year to do a marathon," he said, "and I couldn't walk for a week. My toenails had fallen off and all kinds of stuff. So, give yourself a break." And I'm like, "Yeah, but we have to understand also what we can achieve if we start to align with what is the biological norm again."
Yeah.
So am I ready for tomorrow? My technique's ready for tomorrow. And that's what I've always held. I can't, again, predict whether there's a thorn or something else thrown in my way. We've changed the route somewhat because what I found, I think, was probably a massive distraction that I hadn't anticipated was the traffic. Like we ran from Land's End to Land's End to Whittington. And the first leg of that in Cornwall was like the A30. So it's a dual carriageway, massive trucks flying past. And it's a distraction. and you're in and out of what should be, for me, the mindful practice of running. So that I found exhausting. I found that probably more exhausting than the physical effort of the running was just the mental focus on the traffic, not being hit by trucks or dealing with abuse out the window or whatever was thrown my way.
Yeah. So
I don't doubt the physicality of it again, but I can't put that out there. I think that's the biggest lesson so far. Is whereas previously it was like, I've got this in the physicality, and it was like, aren't you nervous? And I was like, well, no, I trust the process and I trust my physical ability to do it and my technique. What I was more concerned about was the logistics.
Yeah.
But it turns out the logistics held up and the physicality didn't. Do you know what I mean? And so and that's a lesson. That's a lesson for me, and it's humility in a way. It's for me to just really in a bit and say, well, actually, I don't know how things are going to turn out. All I know is I have this challenge, and that's my challenge, and whatever thrown in my way is still the challenge. That's the point.
It's a really beautiful perspective to hear. There's a real sense that you are staying in the present, and that is something pretty much all of us can improve our ability to do, is stay in the present, not worry about what's happening tomorrow. You're saying, will you finish it? Well, time will tell, right? I guess you're as prepared as you can be, but if someone puts an obstacle in front of you, which is difficult to surmount, then so be it. You'll have to deal with that.
That's the new obstacle. And that will happen in the moment it happens. So it's about, again, exactly as you're saying. It's about being present, living in the moment, and not even, we've done 9.5 marathons, or we have this to go. Because other people view that differently anyway. We were in a fruit and veg store in Shrewsbury yesterday. And the lady in there was asking about the run, and I said, how far you got to go? And I said, we only got 19 days to go, right? And she's like, oh my God, 19 days, that's so long. It was like the complete reversal of my language. It was like, it's only 19 days to go. So it's just being present, really, for me. I don't need to look at, there's 19 days or how many days we've covered. It's really just going to be, as you say, living in the moment of it. And again, taking it back to the breath, I think, will be the reward of it.
I think we should explore that language, how important our language is in terms of how we view challenges, how we view the daily things that are going on in our lives. Before I go down there, I had another thought, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on. If you had to stop right now, today, you were done. You could not continue this for whatever reason. So at the end of this 30-day challenge that you'd put out there in the public and the media, if you had to stop after doing 8.5 marathons instead of 30, would you consider that to be a failure?
No, because it is a challenge, but the challenge would be whatever I succeed in within the challenge.
Yeah,
I probably there would be a day. It would be a day there, and I'd explore all those multifaceted personalities again, a victim and whatever. But again, we'd wake up and we go, well, okay, look, I've got this amazing family. I've got, what have I got to complain about? For a start, it's a pretty privileged thing to go and do anyway. I'll tell you, I'm going to take a month off and go running the length of the UK. Do you know what I mean? It's, first world problem, right? So I guess for me, it would be, I'd still continue, like we still did the interviews. We still interviewed sustainability experts, even on the days I wasn't running. So it meant we were just driving all over the place because, again, it's two-pronged, isn't it? There's a message there which is about raising awareness for sustainability in the environment. I can still do that. So what if a truck hit me tomorrow and I couldn't do that, then I can't do that either. I'd live in the moment and be present in whatever the lesson would have been of that. Yeah, and that would probably be, focus on the run. Yeah. Not the traffic.
But there is something in that, I think, about, I posted about this recently on social media about we need to be looking for progress, not perfection. Far too many of us, we let this the strive for perfection get in the way of actually making progress. I'm either going to the gym 4 times a week and working out. Oh, I missed one. Oh, I can't do it. I'm going to stop. There's a few nodding heads actually in this audience already on that, because this is a very, very common theme. And I think, you're maybe doing it at a much more extreme level than many of us, but everyone's got challenges in their own life. And, I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it, that I have no doubt you will get back on the road and go as far as you're meant to go. And I suspect that means you probably will complete it. But if you don't, you're right, it's not a failure. It's like setting a challenge, it's seeing how far you can go.
You've said it is as far as I'm meant to go.
Yeah.
That's a really nice way of looking at it, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah.
You're a parent, your wife's here, your kids are here, and I know that you maybe have some views on parenting that are, again, potentially different from the norm. And you, I think, like all parents, are trying to do the best that you can for your children. I genuinely believe every parent is trying to do that based upon their understanding, based upon their experiences. They're trying to bring up their kids in the best way that they know how. So I'm interested in the fact that, the family's on the road with you. Also, you mentioned the question Lotho asked you. But did you feel a responsibility as a father? You are facing adversity. Your kids can see that. Your kids can see you're in physical pain. Daddy's not able to do what he has set out to do, as well as how you cope with it yourself. Did you feel an added weight of pressure? I need to model the right behavior here for my children. I need to actually show them how you can overcome adversity.
I think I've shown them. I think it's important for them to see that their papa is human, more than anything. That's the most important thing I can give them. Like they've never seen me cry before. Millie saw me crying. I had my head in my hands in the bedroom. And so they got to see vulnerability. That's so important, right? They get to see, Papa's human. He's vulnerable. Lola said, "You're not going to quit, are you, Papa?" So I got to hear all of it, and I think.
What did you say when she asked you that?
No, I'm not going to quit, because I knew I wasn't going to quit. But it would be a different conversation if I'm sat there and I'm I'm going to quit. If I was that broken, I can't do it. But then they would be around the energy and be able to observe the behavior that came with it. I think Lola taps into the emotion of it because they view it on more of an emotional level than we do. That you're not going to quit, are you? In other words, she knows I'm not going to quit. That's why she's asking. I felt in that moment. And I think I can be the best example of a human being just by my behavior. So if that means I cry, if that means I yell, if that means it's whatever is in that moment, and they're witness to it, they're witnessing something amazing. This is an amazing experience for them to see, what's unraveling here and how I can come through that adversity. So already, Lola, what's on your bracelet, darling? What is it? Breathe. So Lola has a bracelet with breathe on it. And I said, look, whenever you're feeling stressed or anxious, just look at your bracelet and just take a breath in and a breath out, And just because they know that I can work with breath and they've seen me what tools I use to get me out of what made me look like I might be quitting at that moment.
Yeah.
So they're learning, they're observing the behavior. Oh, wow, if I do a bit of breath work, wow, I can be a crumpled mess, crying and sobbing in a pile. When I do a bit of breath work, get in a cold shower and boom, out pops another happy human. That's a powerful message for them, right?
I mean, our kids can often be our teachers, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. They show us everything.
Yeah, they look at things in a very different way often from the way we do as adults, and often, I guess, in many ways, they have less baggage that they've accumulated.
Yeah.
And it can be I certainly know with my own kids, I'm learning lessons from them every day. They really help me to be present and mindful. What lessons have you learned from your children through this process?
What lessons have I learned from my children? I learn everything through my children. I learned to keep my feet out of the way when they're walking by. We learned that, didn't we, quite quickly. Again, I learned to be vulnerable. Vulnerability, I think, was a big message for me through this trip, whereas before I almost felt like... I don't know whether if I felt like the kids maybe thought me as like this superhero of a papa going and do these things, which is great, but it's not the truth, right? So The truth is, there's vulnerability in this situation. It's
not the truth, but
I think they just allowed they provided the perfect. They held the space for me to do that. That was what was incredible.
You say it's not the truth, but it's what a lot of society, what a lot of men consider to be the truth, right? You can't show vulnerability. You can't show that side of you. I'm acutely aware that yesterday was World Suicide Prevention Day.
Oh, yeah.
And with the amount of men committing suicide in the UK, it was just staggering statistics. And one of the things we often talk about is the fact that men don't feel in society that they can open up, that they can be vulnerable, that being a man is shutting down your feelings and keeping it all inside and going on even in the face of adversity and on some level. So I think it's quite poignant that this is happening the day after that in terms of, showing vulnerability, to your children from a man at a young age, at their young age, I think it's a wonderful thing to show them. And what do you think generally about men showing vulnerability in society, and how we're going to encourage that more and more?
Well, I think firstly we need to show all the male emotions, not just vulnerability. I think that's another thing, that male emotions have been suppressed for so long, right? And I always have this feeling about post-war, PTSD that comes handed down from wars, and what men weren't meant to talk about or weren't meant to show emotions. We were all inheriting some weird stuff back then. And so I've held men's retreats where it's not just about vulnerability, it's about letting them go off in the woods and roar their heads off, or hug, or chant, or do something. We're missing all that, It's just hello, how are you? Yeah, I've got 4 emotions. I'm happy, I'm tired, I'm a little bit upset, and it didn't go well at work today. Do you know what I mean? That's no wonder everyone's so suppressed, right? So it's about exploring all the emotions. And I think it's very important, vulnerability, but I also think we need to show our strengths too, the strengths of our emotions, And it's actually, that's not just masculinity. That's on both sides. We're all just a bit of a mess, really, emotionally, aren't we? So I think, the more you can identify it and the more you can explore it, the better. And it might take adversity to do that. That's the thing. I've lost the business, gone through a breakdown, broke through, and just realized that, it's happening for me, right? It's not happening to me. It's just happening for me. And again, out of that, I've always become a better human. I've always become stronger for it. And I think the strength has come from identifying, again, what those emotions are within. And the more deep and the more inner work you do, the more you're familiar with those.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is like the multifaceted personality I'm talking about. That's just their emotions, really, aren't they? Things that get flagged up. And you go, I recognize that one. Okay, thanks. And then goodbye. And then the next one comes up. I recognize that one. And you just go on. And vulnerability is it's part of that. It's just.
You mentioned losing a business and going through various things, and these experiences in life, they shape us, don't they? We've got choices. We can either sort of well in the grief of them, which again might be appropriate at certain times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's just important, right?
And hopefully we can learn from them and actually come out on the other side with some new tools. I wrote about this actually in my last book on stress. I remember one of the things I've learned from my wife's family really is, my wife's dad's, his family live in Nairobi in Kenya, and they used to have businesses there. They were very successful. And in the coup in the early 1980s, they lost everything overnight. Like literally lost everything. It's a long story, this, but the shortened version is they ended up coming to the UK. Again, started off a business. That didn't work out, lost everything. And I remember, within a few months of meeting now what are my in-laws, my father-in-law had a phrase, about money. He always used to say, money comes, money goes, doesn't matter. And it's just, I get it, as I've got older and older and experienced more in life, I think it's such a beautiful perspective. He's had money and lost everything. Had money, lost everything. And I think when you go through that, you realize money comes and goes, right? Don't worry about it. And it almost sounds trivial unless you've gone through things like that. It's because we think, money's everything. Money's really, really important, right? But I think it's like any experience, any adversity in life has the opportunity to help us learn something about ourselves, learn new tools. And I think that shows that. I think your own experience has certainly shown that to you. But I think your story is also very inspiring for people here, hopefully for the people listening to this podcast. I hope that they can take something from your story, because I think there's something inspirational in, would it have been the same thing, let's say, Tony Riddle goes on his barefoot run and you do it. You do 30 miles a day and
smash it.
And smash it. And there's no problem. Actually, would that be better, or is this better? I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder what the ego would have been like at the end of that.
Yeah.
Like, I just smashed it in 30 days. That kind of voice might come in. But I think we were discussing it. James and I were discussing it, And it makes for a good story, right? But going back to the money is the interesting one, isn't it? I think when you go down that path of and you have loss, doesn't matter what it is, it just highlights the stuff that's really valuable in life, right? And again, all that stuff's for free again, right? All your family and your friends and your connections, and you realize that all the materialism and all this is just stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's stuff that you're handed from the moment you're born, right? You're born into the world, everyone goes, right, here's something, here's another thing, here's another thing. And you just get attached to all this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But really, it's about the fundamental needs again, isn't it? You know, it just highlights that. For me, it just, again, nothing for me can be beaten by going for a walk in the park with my family, or go to the heath with the family, or, you know, a nice meal with friends, or a good night's sleep, or a bit of meditation or breath work. You know, it's just such simple things. And I think they're really the tools. They're the tools to help us get through adversity and the mental challenges, right?
They are. And what's really apt for me is that you said what a privilege to be able to take a month off and go and run around the UK, which of course it is. But the flip side is these tools you're talking about, hugging more, connecting with friends, you know, breathing, having a cold shower, let's say, meditating. A lot of these things are actually completely free and accessible to everyone. So I wonder if we might actually go into some of those tips, because I think you have got a wealth of experience of dealing with people, trying to help them with various tools. Sorry to interrupt. If you are enjoying this content, there's loads more just like it on my channel. So please do take a moment to press subscribe, hit the notification bell, and now back to the conversation. And so you mentioned breathwork. You mentioned that your daughter wears a bracelet with breathe on it.
Yeah.
And you know, breathing is something I'm exploring more and more at the moment. I've become a little bit obsessed with it because I really do think it could be one of the ultimate ways of actually controlling your biology. And it's a simple thing that with some dedicated practice can really have a lot of downstream effects.
Absolutely.
You've got quite an advanced breathing practice. So I wonder if you could share, and maybe we might be able to do it with the live audience potentially.
We can have a breathe off.
One that's also going to work for
what we do is just leave. We'd walk out then. We just leave you there.
One that's also going to work for people listening to this. But is there a short breathing practice that you like that we could all potentially try and do together?
Well, this isn't me. This is because I'm not a breath guru. But I basically, we started off with, there's so many modalities. I'm not looking at my phone. I was looking at an app to get a breathing app on. I'm not answering messages, by the way. There's so many modalities of breath, right? And I really loved all the Wim Hof work and getting people in the ice bath. But what we were finding is that people were already coming in upregulated and anxious.
When you say upregulated, can you just explain what you mean for people who are not familiar with that?
We talked about cellular behavior before in Petri dishes, haven't we? But right, imagine a cell has two behaviors. It has a growth and it has protection. It's like a switch. Growth, protection, growth, protection. Right. If I put really growth promoting information into a petri dish with cells in it, they go growth. And if I put information in there that's toxic to them, they go protection. So growth I like to call parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, right? Does that make sense? That's like, if I was a primate and I was in the trees, I'd just be super chilled like this. And people say, have you been smoking marijuana? But I'm really chilled out, right? And then the moment a threat comes, then I'm off. And that's what we call sympathetics. That's like the fight and flight, let's say. And so that would be the protection mechanism within the cells. Okay. And this mechanism can be, I can add toxins or I can create a signal. And the signal is like perception. So perception can trigger that. It's just like, this is Bruce Lipton's epigenetics, right? So breath work for me is a way of getting people to go into what would be growth, or I can put them into more of a protection mechanism. So upregulating can be an alert state. Like I need someone, they might be a bit low, like they're a bit down, and I might need them to go and be really alert for something. So I go, right, I want you to practice this method of breathing. It will pick them up so they become alert. You know, so that's an alert state. If I want them to be really chilled out because they're already like, oh my God, this is great, I'm loving this, but I need them to go into a meeting or something, or put up a PowerPoint, right? And I want to downregulate them, then I choose a parasympathetic form of breathing that's going to chill them out. Does that help slightly explain that? Now, I'm not a breath guru, but I work with an app that I found. A friend of mine, Chris, from We Move magazine, we did an ice bath. We had a load of people come. And he said, I've just interviewed this guy called Eddie Stern. You've got to listen to this. And Eddie Stern was a Ashtanga practitioner for likes of Sting and Madonna. Anyway, he put this app together, and it's called the Breathing app. So I recommend that I'll put it up on your. I'll send you a link to it. You can send it out. You guys are on a mailing list, I guess, aren't you? It's very simply called Breathing app, and it's the most beautiful thing. Look at that. Look, there you go. And you have this. So I'm going to put this up on a wall in a studio of mine. And if I press play, look, the circle goes bigger. That would suggest the breath in. And then the circle goes small again, and that would suggest the breath out, right? That's very simple, isn't it, right? Okay. Then it has this version, which is wonderful. Oh, no, it's not. It's different. Can you hear me? That's the breath in. Yeah. I'll put it on this mic. Yeah, okay. So there's an inhale sound, and there's an exhale sound. Then you can program in, how do I want to do that? I can create a 4-6 tempo, so that would be 4 seconds in and a 6 seconds out. The longer the exhale, the more the heart rate and blood pressure will drop. Okay, so when we breathe in, you get like the tempo goes up. When you breathe out, things start to relax off again. So you want the out breath to last just that bit longer. The thing about that, you have to play with it, because a 4-6 tempo for some of us you might only be capable of a 2-4 or 3-6 or whatever. Yeah. And what you can do, if you force tempos on people, they get a bit upregulated trying to find it. So firstly, let's practice this. You put your hands on your chest, like that. Okay. And I want you to understand the difference between Lola, talk us through nasal breathing. Like the nose is for what? And what's the mouth for? Eating, right? So noses are for breathing, mouths are for eating, right? There you go. Simple. So if I ask you to breathe in through your mouth really deeply, eyes, can you feel your chest rise? Yeah. Okay. So that would suggest the lungs are only about here, right? Would you agree? Right, okay. Now I want you to put your hands on your tummy. Like that. Okay. Breathe out. And now I want you to take a long inhale through your nose like this. And then you kind of get your belly and your chest, don't you? So we just suggest that you start to understand, I'm reaching the potential of my lungs, really, the full potential of the lungs. So that's a start. So now what we do, we're going to work through, let's try 10 cycles. That's all we're going to do. And so the inhale, I don't want you to think in through the nose. I want you to think up through the nose. So it's more like for as long as you possibly can, and then just a letting go. And then an up through the nose. And then a letting go. I want you to keep the eyes closed and inhale up through the nose. And just keep that tempo for me. In through the nose. And letting go on the out breath. In through the nose. And letting go on the out breath. Let's do 2 more. In through the nose. And letting go on the out breath. So simple. That's like 10 cycles of breath. Simple tool. There's other modalities. So another one is to think of like a box. We covered box breathing on Pratico method, where you might say, I'm going to inhale for say 3, a count of 3, hold for 3, exhale for 3, hold for 3, inhale. So you think of a box, So that's 2 very simple systems.
I mean, that was about 20 seconds of breathing, and it's tangible in the room, the whole
energy
shifts.
Changed. Yeah,
100%. I guess for someone listening to this who's heard the term breathwork, has just heard that and thinks, okay, that sounds great. Have you got something specific you can recommend? Someone who's never done this before, they've heard that, they're inspired to give it a go. But how can you make it achievable for them? Have you got any tips that you can say to them?
Yeah, I think it's to put it in throughout the day, rather than trying to isolate times. I'm going to do breath work now, and put it in a box. So dinner time, simple one. So for dinner, you want to prepare kind of the digestive system. So remember when I said parasympathetic means rest and digest, doesn't it? So you want a rested organism to be able to digest. So I would, before dinner, just to sit down and just, I'm going to do a few cycles of breath. Inhale through the nose, exhale, really relaxing, inhale through the nose, and just try and spend longer on the exhale. That's what I recommend. don't drive yourself nuts trying to achieve 4 seconds in or whatever it is. It's just whatever you feel is a relaxed in-breath.
Because that can become a stress in itself, trying to count this much and that much.
I've been to classes like that, and you're like, oh, okay, I've got it. And you're battling and fighting to try and get the tempo of the person that's leading the class. You know, and we're all uniquely different, right? You have a unique, different respiratory system that might change from day to day. I might go to one class tomorrow and be able to inhale for 10 seconds. I might go again the next day, it'll be 3 seconds. So it's whatever, there's no, I'm now calling them present best, not personal bests, okay? It's a present best, right? If it was a new Olympics, it would be, I don't care, it's a present best.
What you said about dinner time, I think is super, super interesting, because what I have seen with my patients in the last, I'd say, couple of years, what I've noticed is that sometimes people think they're reacting to a food, but they're actually reacting to the fact that they're in a stress state. So how many of us rush around, we're eating, on the go, trying to do our emails at the same time? Again, I do this sometimes. I know I shouldn't do, but again, sometimes you end up in that pattern. And with some patients who thought that they were reacting to a certain food, I would teach them a breath that I use a lot with my patients, the 3-4-5 breath, when you breathe in for 3, you hold for 4, and you breathe out for 5. And some of them have reported back that when they do that for a minute before they eat, they're no longer reacting to the food that they were reacting to before.
Absolutely.
And it's suddenly, when you understand the physiology of stress, it all makes sense. Suddenly you're putting your body out of this stress state, you're allowing it to go into rest and digest, a relaxation state, and suddenly you're no longer reacting to that food. So I absolutely just want to emphasize that doing this before you eat, ideally if you live with other people, a partner or children or friends, get everyone to do it at the same time. It's a really beautiful practice to do together, and it's going to help you digest your food better.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, in that fight and flight response, that moment of stress, there's so much fuel used on digestion alone, right? So on a meal, I might be using 60% of that meal to digest alone, right? And so if I'm stressed out, what am I going to do? It's a fight and flight response, right? The lions in the room right now roaring away at me. What am I going to do? I'm going to go, hold on a minute, I've just got to digest my food, hold on. Or would I shut my digestive system on because I need that 60% of energy to fuel my body to get out the room? You understand? So digestive system is one of the first things to get compromised really with stress.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's why breath work is the key. It's kind of just, you can assimilate with foods with it. It will help your bowel movements for a start. It just helps everything. That whole digestive enzymes and everything just prepare the body for food to begin with. Sleep as well, breath before sleep. I think rest and digest again. So we live in a world that's constantly on, right? And I mentioned this in one of the podcasts I did recently, but it's a lawyer that I coach, Lawrence, and he's now 72. And so for Lawrence, he started out in his career, he would write letters, and he'd write letters from to one lawyer to another. And they do the diligence, and everything would be done within that letter. They would be so thorough in their research. Everything would be done, so they didn't have to write another letter. It would go off. They'd have a week to respond, right? One whole week. Then the fax came. Then he said, right, okay, then we had about 3 days, really, if we were pushing it, if we get away with it. And then the email came, and then it became a day. And he said, and then the email started to accelerate, and then the internet came and accelerated until you then had the office in your hand. And then he said that one letter turned into 10 emails because no one really did the work. It's like it's just writing emails back and forth. Whereas it was so thorough before. So they created more work for themselves. But also what went out the window are those moments of reflection and rest. The moments when they might have just sat back a bit, taken a breath in the office to have a think about what's coming next. That's been removed. So if that's been removed, how do you reinstate it? And you reinstate it by, I set timers in the office for people, 25 minutes, whatever it is, set a timer, ding. Okay, just sit and do a breath. Just return back to the breath for a moment. Tick them off. Right, I've done a breath now. Great, I've got a breath. I've accumulated a breath. See how many breaths you can accumulate in a day. And then when it comes to the evening, as a parent, as a papa who runs a business and does all kinds of other stuff, they don't need to see me with all the crap I've carried for the rest of my day. They want to see me chilled out when I walk in the home, right? So I get to the door and I do a bit of breath before I go in the door because I want to down-regulate before I walk in the house. I also have the tube and London and everyone around me and all that weird energy. I've got to try and dump that before I get in the house. And breath's a great opportunity for that. Then in the house I go. And then before bed, again, down-regulating breath. And if you have babies, again, in the house, you know, it should be the breath as well needs to be around the baby. So you're down-regulated in your rest and digest, because they pick up just on energy. They just pick up on the pure emotion of things. They don't understand the language. The language is the emotion, isn't it? So again, working with breath work to just down-regulate the bedroom and the harmony of the home, I think it's powerful, just working with breath. I think breath's just, we're again, but there's so many modalities of it. I think just keeping it simple keep it simple. Nasal breathing, just as Lola said, noses are for breathing, mouths are for eating, and try and keep it to that. And work on the tempo, trying to exhale for a little bit longer.
I think what you said about coming in from work is something I think a lot of people will resonate with, because we do live in these busy cultures now where, you know, we can't really switch off. Even if you work in an office, maybe I'm harping back to the good old days, but let's say 20 years ago, you worked in that office and you finished off your work, and then let's say you drove home, if that was the way you got back. You'd come in, you'd sort of unwind probably on that drive, and you'd walk in. You wouldn't have the option as the car comes in the drive to pick up the smartphone and quickly just check your work emails and say, oh, something else is coming, I can do that. And I do think this is almost like a hidden epidemic, that we are carrying stress from our work days into our personal lives. I think technology, smartphones have absolutely made this. Again, this is not about demonizing technology. It's about saying there is a consequence. There are some benefits and there are some negatives. And I think one of the negatives is that, you know, I've done this before. You come in, you check your email on the drive, and you walk in as you're sort of replying to one, or, you know, checking Instagram as you're walking in. To think that will not have a consequence on the relationship you have with your partner, with your children, it's just simply not grounded in reality. It is having an impact, because, you know, I see the impacts as a doctor, the amount of people who come in with actually relationship issues now, that I think a lot of it is a downstream effect from the fact that we're super stressed out and we don't have time. We've not created that time and space for those people that mean so much to us. So I think, you know, without going on a bit of a rant, I do think something like a breathing practice, or something that you do before you come and re-engage with people, let's say after a day at work, I think is incredibly, incredibly beneficial. And it's something I very much try and do as much as I can, although I'm not perfect.
It's a great tool. Well, we're not perfect, are we? I mean, I've been on my device, let's call it a device, my device, over the last 3 days. Because we've been planning stuff and getting routes and then answering stuff left, right, and centre. And then I realised today I was in the bathroom and Tallulah just came in and she gave me my phone. Right, and she's 3.5. And in that moment I was like, okay, thanks Tallulah. Again, the best lesson of all. She's just shown me. Yeah. You know, you've lost the extension of your arm right now. Here you go. Here's your hand back, or something. Do you know what I mean? So that just highlighted, I've basically been on my device for too much. Now I know. Thanks for that. Yeah. She's highlighted
they teach us, right?
Yeah, and you know, we're experimenting with this. We're the generation that's being experimented on, but the danger is that they're observing that experiment. Do you know what I mean? And they learn through observation, don't they, the young ones? So,
I mean,
we have to have tools in place, and we have to have a better understanding of the device. And for me, it's like the Stealing Fire. Have you read that, Jamie Wheel?
No.
And they talk about the altered state economy, and it's something like $4.2 trillion, the altered state economy, which is gaming, alcohol, drugs, altered state drugs, mobile devices, but it's nearly all dopamine. So we have happy hormones, right? So we can all hug each other and get oxytocin. You hug for longer, you get serotonin, right? Those really awkward ones where you hug your relatives and they go, ooh. We could be moving around in the room and playing together and just stirring up a crazy party, or go to, you know, what they call the morning raves now. Morning glory view. You can go to that and you get oxytocin and endocannabinoids, endorphins. You get all those happy hormones going. But we have a happy hormone saboteur, and it's like dopamine. Dopamine is a pleasure-seeking hormone, so you're always seeking. And this thing, they say that, I think it's Sapolsky said that, you know, to even get a like or a swipe or something is a 400% increase of dopamine. The highest increase of dopamine is an orgasm. That's 100%, right? So we're all chasing 400%, and then gaming for kids is 800%. They've got games now that are 800% dopamine. You can't beat that, you know. So you have to have tools in place to find ways of stepping away from it, because it's almost like the replacement it's a pacifier. So the more suffering we have, you know, if we don't use things like breathwork, meditation, mobility, go to yoga, do these things that are actually the free stuff, we end up pacifying to deal with the suffering instead, which can be the altered state economy, which I'm saying. It's like alcohol, there's drugs in there, there's whatever, but there's also shopping, and there's this, right? And it's just another form of just escapism, pacifying, dealing with it.
Well, this is actually, particularly in the last 24 hours, something that
Went
scares
off on
me a
one
lot.
there, sorry.
No, it's important. I went on BBC Radio 5 Live yesterday at lunchtime. They called me in the morning and said, "Could you come on? We want to talk about information overloads." So I went on a chap called Nasal's show, which is brilliant. And there were 3 other people there with me, and we were talking about information overloads, this society where we are, you know, constantly consuming. And I was trying to say what impact I think it's having, not judging it, but saying the impact it's having on our brain. Various parts of our brain are responding to that in real time. And also some simple tools. And what was really interesting, I said, look, I get it. For some people, it doesn't appear to be a problem, but just be aware that there could be consequences of this. And right at the very end, and we were there for about an hour having this discussion on live radio. And Nahal asked me for some top tips, and I gave some what I thought were some very simple, practical tips. And then he went around saying, how many of you are going to take the good doctor's tips? And what was interesting, one of the sort of super productive guys who actually is always looking to hack his mind and listens to podcasts at double speed and listens to audiobooks at double speed. Actually, he does that to increase his productivity, but he also makes sure he's got time to chill and meditate and work on his breath. So I think there's that sort of yin-yang balance. He's doing it, being more productive, you know, using what technology can give you, but he's also seeming to balance that. But the other two, we're very much well, you know, I'm not going to do it, you know, saying, you know, I'm not going to do that. They were a bit younger, and I thought, fair enough, everyone's entitled to make their choices. But I was quite sad on the car home afterwards. I thought, wow, even trying to make the case of the consequences of this in terms of memory, insomnia, the fact that parts of your brain are changing in size in response to having no downtime in your life, which is huge. They were still unwilling to change. And it made me feel, I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I always think you can make change. And I still do. I woke up today and I still think you can. But I did think, wow, this is pretty endemic now, where people are hearing it and thinking, no, it's too seductive, consuming more content, watching another YouTube video, listening to another podcast, you know. And I say this as a podcast host that, you know, I think this is a huge problem in society, and one that we are going to have to wrestle with. It's one that I'm so aware of with my children. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I think a lot of people would consider what I do with my kids probably quite extreme in terms of how much I let them on technology, which is not very much at all.
Yeah, we're the same.
And I struggle because I feel I know what this is doing at a young age to your brain. I've read some of that research. It worries me. But then I don't want him to be a social outcast.
You don't want to alienate them.
I don't want him to not fit in with his friends. And I don't have the answer to that.
Well, I think the school system needs to change. There's schools already that are bringing that in, aren't they, where they're having no school, mobile devices in the school.
Yeah, well, the irony is, isn't it, in Silicon Valley, all the tech giants who've come up with this stuff, they all send their kids to schools where you're not allowed devices,
well,
Steve Jobs, out in nature.
Steve Jobs wouldn't allow his kids to have devices, and Bill Gates just says have one computer in the house, it was in the kitchen. Wouldn't let anyone near a device, you know. So I mean that says it all, doesn't it?
That is. But look, Tony, we could go down this rabbit hole for another hour.
We could,
because it's something I'm super passionate about. But I just want to briefly to sort of finish this off for people. You're doing this challenge to also raise awareness about sustainability.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we could just briefly cover sustainability. Briefly cover sustainability. I'm not sure that's possible, but you know, what are the problems in society about sustainability? What are you trying to raise awareness of? And I guess, is it possible to really make a difference by us making individual changes, or do we need some more systemic things to happen in society to actually really make a difference?
I think it happens at both levels, doesn't it? So the individual's impact. I've been doing some amazing interviews. We met this guy from Carbon Analytics. So carbon analytics will mean the future will be, so this is not government. This is moving away from government. This is him. This guy, he's a CEO. And so that you would be able to go to Chris's counter there, and it would show you what the carbon impact is of each thing that you're buying. Isn't that amazing? So you could make a choice then. You say, right, okay, I'm going to buy, a cake over there that's this much carbon versus this much. So that's the individual will change that. But it's a bigger system that has to change behind that. We met with Hugo Taghome from Surfers Against Sewerage. So they're a small organization that have had such a big impact. They have changed legislation, right? This small voice that went to government, and then they were the biggest voice behind having the charge on plastic bags, right? Added. Small Surfers Against, and they're just, we went to see them. How many people came out? 12 people in this office. We were like, what? And they had such a massive impact. And they're now moving towards, they want to change legislation about plastic bottle recycling, having recycling units just for plastic bottles that you can go to. So, and then the individual can be about, what you recycle, what you reuse, what you upcycle, And so I think from the individual's perspective, yes, we all need to be the change, but also at the same time, don't give yourself anxiety. It's like some instances, I might have to buy a plastic bottle of water, I might have to do that. But I might have saved 3,600 plastic bottles by getting a water filter installed in my home, which I've done. But the old plastic bottle, I'm not going to kill myself over that.
It's again what we talked about at the start. Progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
It's not about you're either doing everything for sustainability or you're not. You can sort of do a bit of both. You can try your best on an individual level, but accept that actually society does make it hard sometimes. And sometimes
absolutely
you will fall short of what you would ideally do, but don't stress about it.
Yeah, eventually the system will change. It is changing already.
The plastic bag charge has been amazing.
85%. Yeah, drop in plastic bag use. I think it's higher than that. Was it? What did you say?
I think
it was 85%. Yeah. So that's a huge change, and that was to a group of people. They changed legislation. That's one way of doing it, And you can join groups like that. You become a member of the SAS, right? Surfers Against Sewerage. So that's one way of doing it, right? Again, you can make small changes yourself, but I think the important thing is just not put yourself in that state of anxiety that, oh my God, or put a label on yourself,
Yeah.
But don't create an ism out of it, because then you have to keep striving for the perfection, And also, if you're on social media, don't just put it all out there on social media and berate on others who aren't quite as sustainable as you, because that's not sustainable either, And I think it's becoming more of a sustainable human being, I think. And so sustainability doesn't just come down to what we're recycling. It also comes down to how we can sustain life, in a world of chaos, which goes back to the original conversation of breathwork meditation. And that's how you become sustainable. I guess you get behind as well cafes like this, an organisation like this that are making the change. Instead of going down the road and grabbing a Starbucks or a Costa, where they could have implemented a lot of this a long time ago, and are still churning out the same plastic lids and plastic cups. It's inexcusable, really. I think if you have the money and you're going to go and buy a new car, the obvious thing to do is steer away from, the diesels and the petrols and start getting behind the EV, the electric vehicle, because it's only going to make it bigger and then eventually cheaper.
Yeah.
Sustainable fashion, again, yes, you might spend a little bit more on it, but those companies have to spend a hell of a lot more than you think to be able to transform themselves from not being sustainable into a sustainable brand. It changes at every level, on a mechanical level, down to packaging, employment, everything has to change for them. So someone has to take the hit. Otherwise, their company isn't here anymore. So I guess, if you can, you get behind the businesses that are trying to be the change. Yeah. And you do what your bit at home as much as you can, and then go and become a member or a group like SAS, as I say,
Or do some barefoot running, then you don't even need to buy running shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah? I like
there
it.
You go.
You can.
That's another way of doing it. You can walk around barefoot. Remove the chairs from your home. There you go.
We covered that on the last one. So if you want more on that, do listen to my previous conversation with
Tony. Just minimalist
living.
living. There you go. That's a good way to stop, isn't it?
What is minimalist living? I think encompasses all of those things, actually.
Remove attachment.
Yeah, sure. Look, Tony, we've covered so many different topics. I really enjoyed our conversation. Did you guys enjoy our conversation?
Yay.
It's It's really been awesome to actually do this in front of a really live, intimate audience. I am actually planning at some point to take this podcast on the road.
Brilliant.
And this was a really nice sort of almost like warm up, as it were. So thank you guys for being here for that. Tony, you know how I like to end each of these podcasts. It's called Feel Better, Live More, because when we feel better in ourselves, we get more out of life. You mentioned so many tips today. I wonder if you could leave the people in here today, but also the listeners at home, just some short, simple tips. I know you've covered loads already. Maybe pick a few from, our physical health and pick a few maybe for sustainability. Simple tips that people can think about applying in their life immediately.
I'm going to move away from the physical self. I'm going to move back into the mind again, and just I think leave you with what I discovered on Tuesday, which was to trust the process, respect the process, be patient whilst in the process, and when you finally figure out that it's all process, just be.
If you enjoyed the themes within that conversation, I think you will really enjoy this one with the inspirational Wim Hof.
It's like a natural vaccination. There is no cortisol, no oxidative stress. This is the way nature meant it to be. Everybody in the world should take the damn beautiful cold shower a day. It is